The night wind whispered across the palace roofs of Babylon, carrying the scent of sand and myrrh. Beneath the starlit sky, a hush of tension wrapped the great city. For tomorrow, the decree of the king would be tested. In his chamber, Daniel knelt upon the cool stone floor, his hands clasped and lips moving softly in prayer. Outside, the murmurs of jealous officials filled the shadows. They had trapped him with a law that forbade his prayers to anyone but the king. Yet Daniel's heart did not tremble. He knew whom he served. As torches flickered and footsteps echoed toward his door, he rose calmly, his eyes shining with faith that burned brighter than fear. For though the lions waited, so did his God. They took Daniel to the king, who watched with grief heavy in his eyes. "Your God will deliver you," Darius whispered, though his voice trembled with guilt. Daniel bowed, serene as the guards led him toward the pit where the lions waited. The air grew colder as they approached the stone enclosure. Growls rolled from the darkness below, low and rumbling like thunder beneath the earth. The crowd fell silent. Daniel stepped forward without hesitation, his faith an invisible shield. As the massive stone door groaned open, a single torch's light caught the glint of eyes in the shadows. Hungry, waiting, alive. Chains clinked softly as Daniel was lowered into the pit. The lions stirred, muscles rippling beneath their tawny coats. Dust rose from the floor as the stone lid rolled into place above him, sealing him in utter blackness. Yet even in the dark, Daniel's voice rose, steady and sure, as he prayed. The sound of roaring faded into silence. Outside, the king paced through the night, refusing food, his crown laid aside. He could not rest, haunted by the image of his friends surrounded by beasts. But within the pit, a miracle was unfolding unseen. The night deepened. King Darius sat upon the palace steps, staring toward the horizon where dawn would come. He whispered prayers to the God of Daniel, though he had never known him before. The guards kept silent, for even they felt the weight of the moment. Inside the den, Daniel's voice had grown faint, then quiet. But peace still rested upon him like morning dew. The lions, once restless, now lay in a protective circle around him, their golden bodies warm and still. When morning broke, the sky flamed gold and rose. Darius ran to the den, his voice cracking as he called out, "Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God saved you?" For a heartbeat, silence. Then from the darkness came a calm voice, "O king, live forever. My God sent his angel and shut the lions' mouths." Joy swept through Darius like sunrise breaking the night. The stone was rolled away and Daniel emerged untouched, smiling with gratitude. The people gasped, for not a mark was upon him. Faith had silenced the hunger of beasts and the doubt of men. The light of morning spilled over the walls of Babylon, washing the city in gold. King Darius, his robe disheveled and eyes weary from sleeplessness, stood beside Daniel, who shone with quiet peace. Around them, the officials who had plotted his downfall watched in trembling silence. The king's heart burned with both anger and awe. Anger toward deceit, awe toward the God who saves. Daniel spoke softly to the king, his words full of grace and forgiveness. The people whispered, "Surely, his God is alive." The lions' roars echoed faintly in the distance, not of hunger now, but of reverence. King Darius lifted his hand and commanded that the men who conspired against Daniel be brought forth. Gasps rippled through the crowd as guards seized them, their faces pale with fear. "You used deceit to harm the innocent," the king declared, his voice like thunder rolling over the desert plains. "Now your own words will judge you." Justice in Babylon was swift, and the murmurs of the people carried one message: Daniel's God had proven his power, and the proud had fallen. The lion's den that had been Daniel's trial now became the place of justice. As the conspirators were cast in, the roar of the beasts shook the earth. The people watched in silence, realizing that only divine protection had saved Daniel from such power. The air was heavy with awe and fear. Yet Daniel turned away, his face sorrowful. "Evil devours itself," he whispered, "but mercy endures forever." His words lingered in the wind, carried beyond Babylon's walls like a message for all generations. That evening, the king called Daniel to the palace terrace. Together they looked out over Babylon as the sunset painted the sky in hues of crimson and gold. "Your faith has shown me the truth," Darius said softly. "There is no God like yours." He ordered a new decree to be written, one that commanded all nations under his rule to honor the God of Daniel, the living God who saves and delivers. The wind carried the scent of myrrh and promise. Babylon's empire had many gods, but now its king had seen the hand of the one who reigns above them all. As night fell, Daniel walked through the quiet gardens of the palace. The air shimmered with the fragrance of jasmine and olive blossoms. He paused by a pool reflecting the stars, his heart overflowing with gratitude. The same God who had shut the lions' mouths still watched over him. In the stillness, Daniel whispered a prayer, not for himself, but for the city, the king, and the people who had witnessed the power of faith. Far above, a single shooting star crossed the heavens, as if marking the night when faith had conquered fear. The sun rose once more over Babylon, gilding the towers with gold and the air with promise. Messengers rode out from the palace gates, carrying the king's new decree, sealed with his royal mark. The words upon the parchment were unlike any ever spoken in that mighty empire. "All people, nations, and tongues shall fear and honor the God of Daniel, for he's the living God who endures forever." Daniel stood at the palace steps watching the riders depart, the wind tugging gently at his robe. His heart swelled with quiet joy. What began as a night of fear had become a dawn of faith for all the land. Across distant lands, the decree spread like wildfire, carried by the breath of truth. In mountain villages and desert caravans, people whispered Daniel's story. The man who prayed and was saved from lions. Children listened wide-eyed by firelight. Merchants paused in their journeys to speak his name, and shepherds lifted their eyes to the heavens with new wonder. Far beyond the palace, faith began to bloom like spring in hearts that had long known only idols of stone. Within the palace walls, Daniel continued to serve faithfully. His wisdom guided the king's counsels, and his prayers filled the halls with peace. Many came to seek his counsel, marveling at the calm strength that shone from within him. He spoke not of his own power, but of the God who rescues and restores. The courtyards that once echoed with political whispers now carried songs of praise. Even the lions, kept now in royal care, lay quietly beneath the sun, their eyes reflecting the gentleness of the one they could not harm. One evening, as the sun melted into the horizon, Daniel climbed the steps of his home and turned toward Jerusalem. Though exiled far from his people, his heart remained anchored in faith. He lifted his hands and prayed, "O Lord, who delivers, let your name be known among all nations." The breeze stirred gently, carrying his words over the Euphrates, through the palm groves, and into the hearts of those who listen for truth. That night, even Babylon seemed still, listening to the whisper of heaven. That night, Daniel dreamed. In his dream, he saw a mighty tree whose branches reached to heaven, and under it all creatures found rest. From the roots flowed a river of light, and upon the wind came a voice, "Faith makes the fiercest quiet. Those who trust in me shall never be shaken." When Daniel awoke, his heart was at peace. He smiled as the dawn broke once more, for he knew that God's promise was alive, not only in him, but in every heart that now believed. As the seasons turned and years passed, the story of Daniel became a living flame in Babylon's memory. The city that once worshipped stone and stars now whispered prayers to the unseen God who had silenced lions. King Darius grew older, his rule marked by wisdom and peace, his heart softened by the miracle he had witnessed. Often he would summon Daniel to his chambers, seeking not counsel of politics, but words of truth. Together they would speak of justice, mercy, and the power of faith that could turn kingdoms from fear to hope. Word of Babylon's transformation spread through distant lands. Ambassadors arrived from Persia, Media, and beyond the Euphrates, curious to see the kingdom whose king now honored a foreign god. When they entered the palace, they found not golden idols, but a hall filled with songs and laughter. Daniel greeted them not as enemies, but as brothers, speaking gently of the one who saves and loves without end. His voice carried a wisdom that silenced debate and opened hearts, for the truth he spoke was not born of power, but of peace. But even in peace, whispers of doubt sometimes rose among the people. Some wondered if the God of Daniel would still protect them as he had protected him. To them, Daniel became a living answer. He walked among the poor, comforted widows, and taught children under the fig trees. Faith, he told them, is not only for the night of lions, but for every quiet dawn. And wherever he went, hearts were strengthened. The city's soul was no longer forged in fear, but shaped by compassion. One day, as Daniel prayed by his open window, a familiar peace filled the room. He remembered the night of the lions, their breath warm beside him, their eyes gentle in the darkness. "You were with me then," he whispered, "and you are with me still." Outside, the city hummed with life, unaware that within that quiet room, one of its greatest servants was speaking once more with the Almighty. And though his hair was white and his body weary, his spirit shone brighter than ever before. That evening, King Darius came once more to Daniel's home. He found the old man at peace, his eyes bright with the quiet joy of one who has walked faithfully. "Your faith has made my kingdom strong," the king said softly. Daniel smiled. "Not my faith, my lord, but the God who is faithful." They stood together in silence, the twilight wrapping them both in gold. For in that moment, they understood that empires may rise and fall, but truth endures forever. Years passed, and the golden towers of Babylon began to fade beneath the sun of time. Yet Daniel's story did not fade. It lived in the hearts of the people. In every courtyard and market, children spoke of the man who prayed in the den of lions and lived. Teachers told his tale to their pupils, merchants spoke it over trade fires, and travelers carried it to distant lands. Though Daniel's steps grew slower, his spirit remained alight with purpose. He often said, "The strongest kingdom is not built of stone, but of faith." And so, even as empires shifted, the light of his belief continued to burn. One morning, Daniel sat beneath a fig tree, as children gathered close, eager for another story. He told them of faith that stands when fear would fall, of trust that shines in darkness. "When you pray," he said, "you speak to the one who shut the lions' mouths, and when you live with kindness, the whole world sees his light." The children's faces glowed with wonder, their hearts quietly storing away his words like treasure. Long after Daniel was gone, they would whisper them again, to their children and their children's children. As time went on, Daniel's body weakened, yet his heart burned ever brighter. One evening, he called his closest friends and students to him. "The world will change," he told them softly, "but God's truth will not." He blessed them and reminded them to be faithful, no matter what kings may come. "The same God who was with me," he said, "will be with you." Outside, the sky turned crimson as the first stars appeared, as though heaven itself listened to the final teachings of its servant. That night, Daniel dreamed again of the lions, but they were no longer fierce. They lay beside him in peace, the den filled with light. He heard a voice say, "You have finished the race. Rest now, faithful servant." When dawn came, Babylon awoke to find its prophet gone. His spirit lifted into the presence of the God he had served so long. But in every corner of the city, the echoes of his faith remained. The lions roared that morning, not in hunger, but in remembrance. Years later, the people of Babylon built a garden in Daniel's memory. Children played beside fountains carved with lions, and travelers paused to pray where he once walked. His story lived on, woven into songs and scripture, whispered across generations, and through every retelling, one truth remained. Faith has power to still the fiercest roar. For Daniel's night with the lions was not the end. It was the beginning of courage for all who believed. Generations passed, and the sands of time covered the streets where Daniel once walked. Yet his name was never forgotten. Traders spoke of him beside desert fires. Scribes wrote his story on scrolls that crossed oceans and empires. From Babylon to Persia, from Persia to distant lands, the tale of the man who prayed among lions became a song of courage. Parents told their children, when fear surrounds you, remember Daniel and the God who never sleeps. His faith became a bridge, carrying hope from one heart to another until it reached far beyond the horizon. Far away in the hills of Judah, children sat beneath olive trees and listened as their elders spoke of a man who had served foreign kings, yet never forsook his God. He prayed, they said, even when the world told him not to, and the lions bowed to faith. Hope stirred anew among the exiles who longed for home. They believed that if God could save Daniel in Babylon, then he could restore their people in Jerusalem. Thus, Daniel's story became a seed of courage planted deep in the hearts of the weary. Years later, a young scribe in Persia found an ancient scroll bearing Daniel's name. By lamplight, he read of faith that stilled beasts and of courage that defied kings. Moved to tears, he wrote beside it, "The God of Daniel is the God who saves." From his pen flowed words that would echo through generations, reminding rulers that no throne stands higher than heaven's. And though Daniel had long departed, his words still spoke, alive, enduring, unbroken. In time, the empires that had once risen in splendor fell to dust. Babylon's towers crumbled, and the voices of kings faded into silence. Yet Daniel's story endured, not carved in stone, but written in hearts. It crossed generations, cultures, and languages, reminding all who heard it that no power on earth can silence the faithful heart. His night with the lions had become the world's everlasting dawn. In every age, when fear rises and darkness growls like lions, Daniel's voice still whispers through time. Have faith. Pray. Trust. His courage became a lamp to guide the trembling. His story a roar of hope that silences fear. And so, through the centuries, in temples, homes, and hearts, the lesson remains. Faith makes even the fiercest fall quiet. The den may change, but the promise never does. The God who delivered Daniel still delivers today. Long after the empires of men had turned to dust, Daniel's story lived on in the hearts of those who believed. The world changed. New kingdoms rose, new languages were spoken, but faith remained, and far beyond the veil of time, in a place untouched by shadow, Daniel awoke in eternal light. Around him shone the brilliance of heaven, brighter than 1,000 dawns. The voice that had once stilled lions now welcomed him home. Well done, my faithful servant. In that moment, Daniel knew. The courage of one man had echoed through eternity. Daniel looked around and saw familiar faces, those who had once believed because of his story. The children he had taught beneath fig trees, the friends who had prayed with him, and even King Darius himself, his eyes now bright with everlasting joy. They stood together in the kingdom of God, where no tears fell and no fear could ever dwell. Here, Daniel said softly, is the den where all are safe. The air shimmered with music like sunlight on water, and heaven rejoiced for every soul that had been led to faith. He was shown a vision of the world below, nations rising and falling, People praying in quiet rooms, children reading his story by candlelight. And Daniel wept, not with sorrow, but with joy, for he saw that the same God who saved him still walked among his people. Every prayer lifted in faith was a spark of light, and every heart that trusted was a lion silenced by peace. From heaven's height, he whispered, "The God who was with me in the den is with you still." Then Daniel saw a throne shining brighter than the sun, and upon it sat the Ancient of Days, the same God he had trusted when all seemed lost. Fire flowed before the throne like a river of gold, and multitudes bowed in reverence. Daniel fell upon his face, overwhelmed by the majesty of the one who reigns forever. The Lord spoke, "You were faithful in the night of lions. Now enter the light that never fades." At those words, Daniel's spirit was filled with eternal peace. And so the story comes full circle. The man who prayed in Babylon now walks in eternal peace. His faith outlived empires, his courage outshone crowns, and his trust in God still speaks to every heart that trembles in darkness. For Daniel's night with the lions was never truly about danger. It was about the power of prayer, the strength of belief, and the love of a God who never leaves his children alone. The lions sleep, the man of faith stands, and heaven forever echoes with the quiet roar of victory.